welcome to All Things Conflict. Today's episode, we're looking at things from an employer's point of view. The series is about workplace conflict and the struggles that we all go through. And I'm really happy to present to you today Cornelia Staeubli, who is the CEO and one of the founding members of the Ottolenghi chain of restaurants. Cornelia, how lovely, how amazing that we're having this conversation for people to be able to listen to us.
That's good, Maria. It's nice to be here. Thank you.
So, for people that don't know, you're the CEO and one of the founders of Ottolenghi. And, Ottolenghi is a well-known, prestigious restaurant chain. Yotam Ottolenghi is a well-known chef and known for his culinary innovation. And behind the glamour of that comes the hard work. And I think I would love to begin our conversation with, you talking about what it's like to go from a small family business of, 20 people up to, what are you now, about 600?
Yeah, between five. We just opened a new location in Richmond, so we're about 580 people. Yes.
Yeah, well, we've had on the podcast, we've had guests who have been, employees that have had problems with their employers, and we've looked at that side. But, it's sometimes no fun for employers either. And so it'd be nice to talk about that journey of growth from 20 to 600 odd and, and what that takes.
Yeah, so we started in 2002. They opened, it was Yotam, as you mentioned, Yotam Ottolenghi, Noam, and Sami Tamimi. The three of them, they started Notting Hill Shop in 2002. And I joined them a few months later. By coincidence, I passed by and I started to work there. And then I became friends, and then they made me partners, and then we opened several more shops. So we started, as I mentioned, in Notting Hill. 2002 was a small deli takeaway shop and had a table for about 10 people to sit down. And we had about 20 staff members. And then over the last 22 years, we are now at 10 locations. They all are in London. We have one in Bicester, and we opened just 2 months ago a restaurant with the Mandarin Oriental in Geneva. So yes, starting with 20 people, at one point we were 11 different nationalities of the 20 people, working together in a very small space. We, the founders, we were all working there, working together, and then we opened, every few years another place. It is challenging when you from a small team where everybody knows each other and everybody feels they're part of it, and then you suddenly have got more people where you have to start to put processes in, procedures in. And this is sometimes difficult because you also don't want to lose the individuality of each location, how they operate, but you still have to make it a little bit clear and have a little bit a common thread through the whole thing. It is important to put this in, and how to get the people buying into it is a challenge. But I think it's by communicating, that they fully understand what we are trying to do, what is also in for them. I mean, growing is also new challenges for them, new opportunities where they can grow. And yes, it's, as I mentioned, communication. And it's also, the fear. I mean, humans always have fears of change. Or what does it mean for me then? Or what is it? What does that mean? Or who is this person getting more than I do? So it's just being clear about the things and including them. I think that's what we succeeded very well at Ottolenghi, including the people. I mean, we have people with us from the start, most of our staff have been for many, many years, is that they are being part of the growth and of our success. And we try also to give them, that they take their responsibility for what they're doing. That, yeah, as I mentioned, being part of it, I think.
What a journey. I mean, I suppose as you were speaking, I was particularly struck by this idea that, we could have been working together and just riffing off each other and being able to bounce ideas, and then you grow and then you grow, and then suddenly there are people in the business that I've never met. And then, what I heard you say is then you have to start bringing in systems and policies. And I suppose part of that is clarity, part of that is standards, maintaining standards, and part of that is fairness. And then you're also, you're in the hospitality industry and you've got lots of kind of creativity. You've got a lot of people who want to develop themselves creatively. So I suppose my question to you is, when you look back, when there's the outside pressures of, the law, catering industry, health and safety, all sorts of things, those kinds of pressures. And then the internal pressures of, now you've got a lot of mouths to feed, literally. How have you seen communication change? What have you lost and what have you gained?
I mean, one thing is, us as the founders, we couldn't be everywhere at any time. So we had to, build, I guess, a hierarchy, and one thing we always try to, to keep that as lean as possible. But it is important when you create this hierarchy that the way you communicate, that they then communicate the way you would like them to communicate. And this, of course, is always a little bit a challenge. Do they hear you the way you would like them to hear? And do they hear it so that they can communicate further down the way that you get what you want? And I guess it's, something that's why we have you coming into our company quite often and helping us with this is really how to, the sending and the receiving, so that we are very clear in that. And, how we communicate with each other and that we check back that they have heard it the way we would like to. And it is a challenge, yes. And I think one thing is with your training, we all have learned to really check back and asking, what did you hear me saying? We too much, we think like you say something and the other person hears something completely different, and especially with feedback and all that. And I think I can give you an example, and you were part of that. When many years ago, me and one of my colleagues had quite issues with each other. Somehow we couldn't communicate, and we had a session with you. And I don't know if you remember, but when I was talking, and afterwards, when you asked her, "What did you hear Cornelia say?" she said that I'm bad at my job.
And that did not reflect on any level the words that you had spoken.
Yes. And before we had the training and you're helping us with this, I just would say these things and didn't check, and she would walk away. She was probably hurt and, angry, sad, and of course that's not what I wanted, but that's why it's important to check in. Can I just check what you heard me saying, so that, and even now we know we need to do it, we don't do it enough. And I always have to remind myself and all my colleagues, anyone who is in a managing position, please check back, that it's sent the way you wanted it to send.
So that's really a big part of my work. And, one of the things I love, showing people is, sometimes I can drive a bus in the gap between message sent and message received. And similarly, I can drive a bus between a person's intentions and their actions. And that's also a rich place for conflict to sort of start to develop and spread and escalate. But another thing that came to me, message sent and message received, even if we're just talking about intentions and sending messages through the hierarchy, and can you be sure that middle management are reflecting the values? I mean, I think that's an important thing. How does that show up for you?
I mean, with the values, part of it is we still are very much in the business, I think that's very important, where, in one thing, we have written it down, one thing that we are better at it, and we never used to write things down and all that. So we do write down, and we have the value, and we have it in different places. So just to remind ourselves again, and as us owners, to go in and lead with these values, be the good examples and all that, and just remind us all the time of it. That is important.
And then there was just another thing that really came up for me. I think I heard you say right at the beginning, in the 20 of you, there were 11 different languages, or 11, and I know that typically in the catering and hospitality industry, people from other cultures, but I think you particularly have lots and lots of different languages, lots of different cultural understandings, and so there's a minefield for an employer of the potential for getting it wrong and finding yourself in the midst of some kind of claim, or claim of discrimination or unfairness or harassment or whatever it might be. Maybe you could speak to a little bit about, just as an employer, the things that keep you awake at night.
Yes, it is, because it's the language barrier, and as you mentioned, the culture, how you approach people and how you communicate. So some cultures it's formality, and some cultures they just go straight in and are very direct. It happens quite. It is a challenge. And another thing is, in hospitality, it's very busy. You're always under pressure, It's not only you have your colleagues and you have to work in a team that is, full on all the time. It's also the guests that you have, the waiters are exposed to the guests, or at the receptionist, or in the shops with the customers. So you have a lot of different things coming at once, and you're under pressure. So that creates sometimes quite yes, exactly. But I think it's always to understand this, and reminding ourselves who I'm talking to, and how do I communicate, and just sometimes it just needs, and we have to remind ourselves over and over, and and like we all, and me, I've been in this for 22 years and working with lots of people all the time, just to remind ourselves again who I'm talking to, or why is it just stop for for a few seconds and just remind yourself, if I get angry or upset, why is it exactly that I'm getting upset? And before, I open my mouth or say something. And I think, this is what I try to remind myself all the time. And when we have when there was a blow up and two people are arguing with each other, and then when have time to discuss that, just to remind everybody again, hey, yes, you were under pressure, yes, this was a conflict, but just to understand why the other person did react like that, so that they really hear each other and understand what the reaction was or why this reaction was.
So what I'm really understanding from what you're sharing is the importance of just for that second before speaking or before taking an action is just connecting back to our common humanity. Like, do that first. That sounds like a piece of advice, really.
Yes. And I always, as an example for me, because I go around to all the locations quite often, and when you go to one location, there was a problem or it's not the way I wanted it, then I already like, maybe I think like, why they're not getting it or why they're not doing it, what we said. And then you go to the next location, it's maybe there is also something you see that it wasn't right, and to the third. And then in the third, I suddenly come in and there was maybe a big mess or was thing. And then I just come out like, why is this such a mess? And but it wasn't because of that. Sometimes it's little things that you then just explode. And that's where it's dangerous. And you just like, okay, yes, because you already, are full of things, the glass is already full, and now you just flip because of something little that is not worth it. And if you don't stop that second and just think, okay, what is it? Just because it annoys me or it's, I think it's an emergency, it doesn't mean that it's for everybody else. There are other reasons behind why the tables are not cleared or why there is a mess in the back of house and all that. Just I always have to remind myself, just check in first, what is it and why I'm feeling like this is that I get angry or something like that.
Yeah, that's really powerful because, I mean, particularly in the restaurant business and in other industries too, there are the pressure cooker moments that I call it, those pressure cooker moments. You've got a restaurant full of diners and you are the Ottolenghi brand, and quite rightly your customers, your diners expect, they're not eating in McDonald's or Pizza Hut. They're coming to a prestige brand and they have an expectation. It's not just the food, is it? They have an expectation of a dining experience. So there's a theatrical part to this, isn't there? The show must go on. And then there's the pressure cooker moments. So I wonder if you can, and, I heard you say, then later on you can kind of mop it up, and maybe you could like really distinctly speak to what you can do in the pressure cooker moment in real time and how you mop it up afterwards.
I think in this, during a service and when everybody needs to deliver what they need to deliver, I think it's very important just to say, hey, can we just put this on the side? Let's, we know it's an issue, but can we just put this on the side? And then really make sure that you say, after that service, let's sit down together and talk, that whoever was involved in it, talk with each other, one of the managers or one of the shift managers and all that, leading that, and just understand that each of them understand why they reacted like that. And it's again the things that we mentioned. It's probably the wrong word or misunderstanding or something else they're upset about that they bring in from home, or a guest was maybe not so nice to them, and so that they can sit down. But it's important that at that moment, you say to them, can we just put this on the side. Unfortunately, we have to get through the service and let's sit down. But really, tell them when we want to sit down and make a time and say, and then really do it.
Yeah, I think those I call it a mop up, a sort of follow up, a mop up, everybody, one of the things that rings through almost every culture is all stories need a beginning, a middle and an end. And so, you have a flare up or something goes wrong or whatever. It's important to bring it to a conclusion so that everyone can feel that something happened and now we can move on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, one thing that over these many years is address it immediately. If there is an issue or something, just sit down. Don't think like it will go over. It's not. And I think one thing why we have people who stay with us for such a long time, I think if you and I really try also with our managers, understand what's going on in your team, be aware of it, and then just talk to them. And it's little things, you can dissolve that by addressing it or just listening. And sometimes is, yes, somebody maybe doesn't work the way they should work, but has nothing to do with work. Maybe they had a fight with their partner, or there is an issue with one of their children or something like that. We bring all these things also in work, and then they're under pressure, and then they just blow up. And just listening and just saying, hey, I noticed, or I'm telling myself that, today you were not at your best. Is there anything, we can talk about, or I can support you with? Address it immediately.
So don't imagine that things are just going to go away by themselves. No, it's important. And I think it's important to be honest about the fact that, you're aware that behaviour's changed or the ball's been dropped or whatever, and then to give people the chance to explain, why that might be for them. And then, of course, if you have, people that you value and people you want to invest in and help you grow the business, or for them to develop, or you're invested in their development, then, of course, like anything, like if, somebody dropped their bag in the street, you'll pick it up for them and give it back to them, It's just a matter of our humanity to remember, to remember that at the end of the day, it is a business. And at the end of the day, it does need to make a profit. The numbers need to work. And so decisions will have to be made one way or another. And in the good times, isn't it wonderful? But in the more difficult times or the stressful times, we need goodwill from everybody. And so then we have to give goodwill.
Absolutely. And another thing is that when we mentioned lots of nationalities, I mean, most people we work together, all our team. Like me, I'm from Switzerland. Everybody comes from another country. It's also the family, and life is. I mean, things happen in life. But we can be here for each other, but also that each of them understands, okay, there is always a moment for something. Now you're in the service, or you have to cook, concentrate on that, but I will be there for you and listen to you after the service. And I think as long as you do this, as I mentioned, address it immediately, I think is important.
And I have to say, working with you and with people at Ottolenghi, I do see that in action. I do see some real care being shown to people. I do see the business going out of its way occasionally. I mean, I think when I first started working with you, I think one of my bits of feedback was maybe you're giving some people too many chances.
Yeah.
If you remember, because then that's another way that other people think that things are unfair.
Yes. And this is something when we talked in the beginning, when you grow, unfortunately, you can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
That's why, these procedures that you have to put in place, as you mentioned, it has to be fair. And sometimes you can't give people. Before we did give people maybe too many, but sometimes it was also a good thing, but you can't do that anymore when you're so many people, because it's not fair, and you lose that a little bit.
Yeah. So this is a really wonderful conversation, and I guess I've got one last sort of question for you, if that's okay. So look, COVID happened. Lots of businesses went under. That would be a testimony to the resilience and how people behaved with each other and all sorts of things. And Ottolenghi has come through that and is growing and expanding and doing its thing. But budgets are tight everywhere now. I mean, there isn't a company that's sitting there saying, "Oh, everything, our cups are overflowing." So learning and development budgets are often a place where companies might start trimming things. What would you say to that? How would you say, where would you look in that area about what's necessary and how you can trim the fat?
I think it's the wrong thing to cut, and absolutely not, because if you don't give that training, you're not, or be able to give the service, or the people cannot develop in their positions and give their best. So if you cut too much there, definitely not. I think, there are trainings and trainings. I think you look into the trainings that really give something back, and the trainings that we have with you it's just so much. You can see, everyone who went through the training with you, it's just the communication is completely different. And it's important. It's important to invest in your staff, and the good ones, and the one who really want to take responsibility for what they say and what they do. They appreciate that, and I think it's important. And you win, if you have staff on the floor or in the kitchen that feel good about themselves, it just comes, and it's important. And we spend so many hours together. You also want to have a little bit of fun, and you don't want to constantly in conflict and all that. And anything you can eliminate, we would like to invest. And we have more in-house training, more that we hired two more people where they go out and training ourselves. We did some training more outside, companies coming in and do some training, but we decided to have it more in-house, so that we have it and are being more involved and know the people also more. And I think that works better.
Yeah, so I think that there are two sort of lessons there. One is you're investing in people so that they can actually be given the tools to do the job in the best way possible. And then you're also investing in people as a way of building the goodwill.
Absolutely.
So this has been a really wonderful conversation, and it's a really amazing insight into. I mean, you were there right at the beginning, and you've taken it all this way, and you're now, you're at the helm. A lot of people are relying on you. So I don't know if there was just one thing you wanted to leave for other people starting businesses. What thing might you have done differently, or what would you say, knowing what you know now in today's world about starting a business and thinking about hiring people?
I mean, we were lucky that we love what we're doing. We really love our product. We're very passionate of what we deliver. And in our sector, I mean, I love people, I mean, I think it's the best thing to work with lots of different people, and in our case also with lots of young people from the different culture and backgrounds. And I love that because I learn all the time. I mean, I get it wrong many times, but I learn again, and I think it's important that you take everything as a learning, and it's not the fear of failing. We all have that, but really concentrate on overcoming that and being able to enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah. So I heard your words about learning, but what really, there was like the sun turned on when you answered that question. And for me, the answer that I got, even though these were not your words, is if you're going to hire people, you've got to like people.
Yeah. You have to, yes. And take it as a learning, because they teach you something. Any feedback is something that you can learn. Sometimes you don't like it. Sometimes it annoys you. Like, well, but you learn from it, and it helps you to become a better leader, a better person.
So focus on the relationships.
Yes, absolutely. I mean,
Wow.
in our thing, people are our biggest asset. If we don't look after them, and we manage to have a good team together, then we wouldn't exist. It's our biggest asset.
But sage advice. Thank you so much for giving me your time. It's always a
All the
joy.
best to
You
you.
know I love you.
I love you too.
Oh, thanks, Cornelia. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.